Shalom Aleichem, good evening. We are continuing our Chatzar Yosef class a little bit late today, but we're going to jump right in. We're starting a new chapter today, a new journey, if you will, through the courtyard. Chapter 9. The chapter starts on page 93. It's called Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai, the Savior of Torah. This is a very fundamental and famous story we're about to learn here. It's a continuation of chapter 6, 7, and 8 that we've done so far regarding the Jewish people during the time of the Second Temple era, when the Romans besieged the city. They were around the city walls. That's how a siege works, right? They surround the wall so that no one can leave and no one can come in, and they basically starve out the people inside. And that's what happened here. Jewish people inside are very divided themselves. A lot of infighting between four major groups, as we spoke about before. And there's no food. There's famine. A lot of tragedy going on. And the biggest chacham, the biggest leader of the Jewish people at the moment in Yerushalayim was Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai. He was one of the students of Hillel HaZaken. The Gemara in Masechet Sukkah explains that Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai was the 80th student. Hillel had 80 major students, and this one, Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai, he was the lowest of the 80. Nevertheless, it gives a whole list of all of his amazing knowledge and prowess that he had. He knew the language of the birds, the language of the angels, language of demons. He knew all Torah back and forth. And he was the presiding leader. So here, we're going to talk about it. We're going to read the story first, page 93, in the English. We'll just skip over the Hebrew for now, for convenience sake here. Abba Sikra was the leader of the Zealots. The Zealots, Baryonim is another name for them, is one of the four groups that were inside Yerushalayim. They were the gangsters, the bullies, if you will. They ran everything by force. Their leader, his name was Abba Sikra. His code name was Abba Sikra. He was the son of the sister of Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai. The Gemara tells us that point. Son of the sister, which makes him his nephew. Abba Sikra. So Abba means leader or father. Sikra really comes from a Greek word, I believe. And the Gemara in this page here, the pages 56 to 57, talks about a group of assassins, if you will, called the Sikrikon. Sikrikon. It's a very well-known thing. In other texts, you'll find it as Sakari or something like that. Sakari, the same root. They were basically this group of assassins, gangsters, kind of people. And they used to assassinate major political figures and things like that. Look up the history. There's a lot of history about them. So, Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai sent a message to him, to Abba Sikra, that's his nephew, saying to him, "Come to me in secret. Let's meet." He came. Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai said to him, to his nephew, "Until when will you continue to do this and kill everyone through starvation?" What was he complaining about? Look at note number 3. Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai blamed the Zealots, the Baryonim, for the famine that was happening, since they're the ones who burnt the storehouses. Remember, they burnt all the food. Remember we talked in chapter, 8? We spoke about that. So he told them, how long are you gonna keep us in here? Because remember, they were controlling everything. They control all the gates to the cities. They control all the major places. The Baryonim. Abba Sikra said to him, "What can I do? For if I say something to them," meaning the other Baryonim, "they will kill me." It's like a mafia. They had a hierarchy, right? Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai said to him, "Prepare for me a method so that I can come out of the city. It is possible that I can arrange some small salvation." He's trying to save something. Abba Sikra said back to him, "Pretend to be sick and have everyone come and ask about your welfare, how you're doing, as if you're on your deathbed, on the brink of death. And bring something rotten, like a dead carcass, dead animal or something like that, and place it near you, so that they will say, people will say that you have died. And then the Gemara says, "Ve'le'ailu bach talmidach," which means, and then have your students enter to you, to your quarters, where your presumed dead body is, to bring you to burial, and let no one else come in, so that they do not notice that you are still light, since they know that a living person is lighter than a dead person. That was Abba Sikra's plan to execute with his uncle Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai. You heard otherwise? What do you mean?
Some rabbi, I don't really like what to do.
You know, every time you say something, you say some rabbi.
Because whatever, I don't want to. What? Maybe I don't want to.
This is the story.
No, not about the story. Basically, about how he said that when people die, they weigh less, because when he said when you die, you're apparently your soul weighs like, he's like, it's not a significant amount. It was like,
yeah. So
like
we'll address that. We'll address that. You'll see. We'll talk about that. So again, just as a short summary, Abba Sikra was telling to Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai, have your students come to you, pick up your body, and carry you out. Meaning, make sure the zealots the Baryonim don't carry you out. Because if they carry you out, they know they're going to notice that you're light still, and if you're light, therefore you're alive. Because they know the difference between a living person and a dead person. That's the pshat of the Gemara. The Baryonim, the zealots know the difference that a living person weighs a little bit lighter than a dead person. But your students won't know that, he's saying. Seems like. Continuing further in the Gemara, Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai did so. He executed the plan. Rabbi Eliezer, one of his students, entered to him from one side, and Rabbi Yoshua, his other student, from the other side. When they were carrying his body. His coffin, I guess it was in a box. Then they arrived to the entrance of the city from the inside, right? They came to the gate, the inner side of the gate, because they're inside the city. The guards who were of the Baryonim, because I told you the Baryonim were running all the entrances and exits, they wanted to stab him. Abba Sikra said to them, if you do this, they will say that they stabbed their rabbi. Don't do it. Then the guards wanted to push Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai's body. Palpate, feel around a little bit. Abba Sikra said to them, they will say that they pushed their rabbi. So, they didn't touch him. They opened the gate and he was taken out. Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai's body was taken out. Presumably dead, but obviously he was alive. And we'll see in section 2, later on in this chapter, what happened when he came out. Who he spoke to, and what he did exactly. This section is dedicated to the Gemara that we just read, to ask questions and analyze the depth of what just happened here in this Gemara.
but it's his creature too.
What, Abba Sikra?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in Note 11, we explained how Abba Sikra, that was obviously not his real name, it wasn't his given name, it was his street name, if you will.
What's
Sikrikon, I spoke about that. Sikrikon is a gangster-like group. They ran things in Yerushalayim at the time.
Father of the gangsters.
Yes.
Didn't we do this already?
We did it on Shavuot. You were there, but these guys weren't there. This is what we're up to chronologically. So we did 6, 7, and 8. Now we're doing 9. Chapter 9. Okay. So you should be well prepared for this. Rashi says over here, we're on page 94 on top. Rashi says, until when will you continue to do this? Right? So when Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai asked Abba Sikra, how long are you going to do this? In other words, Rashi explains, until when will your people, your Baryonim, not allow us to try to make peace with the Romans? Right? That was the main point. Because the Perushim, which means the Pharisees, if you will, it's a Christian term, but the point is that the good kosher Jews, who were led by the kosher rabbis inside the city, they wanted to negotiate with the Romans. They wanted to negotiate with the Roman leaders to try to have some salvation, so they wouldn't get completely and utterly destroyed. The place, Rashi says, the place is near you. I'm sorry, and place it near you, So Abba Sikra told him, take a dead animal, put it by you. Why? Put it in your casket, he says, in your box. So people will say, he died and he's rotting already. Then at the end, when they got to the gate, they wanted to stab him. Why stab him? Rashi explains, they wanted to stab him with a spear, since perhaps he was awake. They wanted to make sure he was dead, pretty much. Right? Last Rashi over here, they will say, what does it mean they will say? Abba Sikra said to them, to the gangsters at the gate, don't do it, because if you do it, they will say that they stabbed their rabbi. What does it mean they will say? Rashi says, who's the they? The Romans. Those Romans outside the city will say that they even stabbed their rabbi. Look, there's no respect. So because of that, that's how Rashi explains that Abba Sikra was referring to that the Romans will say that the Jews don't respect the rabbi. So that's Rashi. Sha'ar Chatzar section, we're going through the questions now. Again, very important. This question section runs through the next several lectures that we're going to be learning this. So it's always important to pay attention to here and really feel the questions. Question number 1. What is the significance of the fact that Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai was the uncle of Abba Sikra? And why does it matter that he was specifically his uncle on his mother's side rather than his father's, right? The Gemara gave us a very specific detail. That Abba Sikra was the son of the sister of Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai. Why do I care so much about that particular relationship?
It always does that when it describes relationships.
Not always.
Okay, when it describes
Not always.
Abraham's relation to Sarah.
I'm talking about the Gemara right now.
So
Not Tanakh.
He was just his uncle or just his nephew?
Yeah.
Cases like that?
Yeah.
But then you would ask which side or how is he not?
Why does it matter which side? Could just said.
Maybe it's something to do with what he's allowed to marry.
What does marriage have to do with this?
I'm saying because isn't that what they do? Like,
I mean, there are certain laws that follow
like Abraham,
the relationships.
Abraham, when he married Sarah, it's like Abraham, who is the uncle.
Yeah, but he's allowed to marry her. This is
what I'm
nice.
saying, so maybe they're trying to.
But there's no one married over here. What are you talking about? There's two men. There's two men. Two men cannot get married in Torah, Mike.
No, I'm saying maybe this is a prelude to a marriage. So they're representing that.
No, there's nothing about marriage over here.
Okay, got that.
So, continuing the question, why was Abba Sikra so ready to help Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai? Isn't he the leader of the Bar Yonim, the Zealots, of the mafia group, whose political position was to fight the Romans rather than make peace? Why did he help his uncle in this attempt to make peace?
It's his uncle.
So what?
Family.
You have to remember, he was the leader of his political position, of this group.
He realized.
Yeah.
He was
That they,
knee deep.
what?
He was knee deep. He's like,
So you're saying he changed his mind?
he was looking for a way out. He was looking. He was knee deep. He's
Maybe.
Like, I can't. He was
Maybe they were feeling the famine so badly.
From what? From the Roman friendship?
Okay, so you have to remember, there was 4 major political groups. One of them is the Bar Yonim. The Bar Yonim, their position was, we are going to fight the Romans to the death. That was their position. And all you Jews here are going to help us. That's what they wanted to do.
What do you like?
So the question is, that's so, why is he, Abba Sikra, the leader of this group who holds this position, helping his uncle who's trying to do it a different way?
Change your heart. Realize there's a better way.
Okay, maybe so you're saying change his mind. Okay, let's see. Next set of questions. What does it mean that they, in other words, the Zealots, the Bar Yonim, know that a living person is lighter than a dead person? This is what Abba Sikra said to Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai.
I'm thinking also maybe dead. You know how they say dead weight?
Okay, so hold off. You're on the right track. The language of our Gemara implies that the Zealots knew the difference between the weight of a dead person versus the weight of a living person, but that the students of Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai, the Talmidei Chachamim, did not know the difference. Why not?
Because they've been about it.
They've been about it.
In battle.
Oh, they've been in battle. Okay. Were the students in on the plot? That's a serious question you have to ask.
Why? Listen, it's
Did the
not-
students know that the rabbi is making this plot to leave the city?
Why does it matter?
It matters big time.
Why does it matter?
Because if they knew that he was alive, who says they're good actors? The lawyer says over here that they would be aiding and abetting his attempt here to cross the law. But in other words,
I don't think they care.
what do you mean they don't care? That's their rabbi. That's their
Exactly,
everything.
I don't think they care.
Of course they care. What do you mean they don't care?
I don't care. That they don't care that they're eating it. They could care less.
No, I'm talking about this. I'm talking about if they are, what's the word I'm looking for? Accomplices accomplices in the plot, then they might not sell so well to the Baryonim around there. Because remember, when they got to the gate, there were some questions, there was some suspicion. They wanted to stab him, check him out. If those students knew who was carrying, those students could have started sweating all of a sudden,
They wouldn't, because if you ask that question to someone who actually thinks this person is dead, stab him, go for it.
They wouldn't
He's
care.
dead.
What do you mean?
He's dead.
But he wasn't dead.
Exactly.
Which means they needed to know.
They needed to know.
No. On the contrary.
Your Honor.
On the contrary. Even if a person is dead, you're not allowed halachically to disgrace his body and stab him and cut him. You're not allowed. You're not allowed.
I don't think they cared. They basically committed mass murder by burning down the storehouses. I don't think they cared if they stabbed one rabbi.
No, but their students would be like, excuse me, it's a violation of respect here in law. And that's what happened. But what do you mean they didn't care? Abba Sikra said it, and they said, fine, we won't touch him. Abba Sikra said.
That was their leader.
No, but what was the reason that he gave?
For the Romans.
Yeah, they're going to say that they're disrespecting the rabbi, and that was apparently a good enough reason for them. You have to remember one thing. Even though these Jews, who were the Zealots, were very rambunctious, if you will, they wanted to fight. At the end of the day, they were Jews. It doesn't mean they didn't keep Shabbat. It doesn't mean they didn't, learn Torah. It doesn't mean that. You understand? That was their political position, and their natural, response was to fight back. It doesn't mean they weren't believers of God and respecters of Torah and Chachamim.
Yeah, but it's one thing to fight back, and another thing to burn.
Listen, desperate times can cause unexpected situations.
I don't think that's what I'm saying.
I just created my own saying right now. That's not what I was trying to say. Okay. So the question again, were the students in on the plot, or were they also duped into thinking that their teacher had died?
Why is that relevant?
Because think about it, if they also thought he died, it would have sold much better. Like I said, it would have been a much safer exit.
So you're not, it wouldn't be safer.
No, I'm brainstorming right now. I'm not answering.
Because then if they got to that point and Abba Sikra wasn't there, and they said, let's stab him, and they said, he's already dead, let's just get him out.
Exactly.
That's not what they said. They said you can't disrespect the body. Don't change the details of the story.
Abba Sikra said that.
Okay, but they didn't disagree. It means that silence is acceptance. They agreed. So look, why does it matter that specifically these two Chachamim, the Gemara points out, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua were the ones who carried out Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai on opposite sides. That's what the Gemara says. One came in from one side, one came in from the other side. Who cares the sides? Who cares who came in? Who took him out? Bottom line, he got out. Why are you giving me these details?
Because it's important.
Okay, why? What does the Gemara teach me? Oh, good.
Chatzar Yosef.
Absolutely. Next set of questions. Rashi interprets the term "they" at the end of our Gemara when Abba Sikra said they will say they disrespect their rabbi. That that the Romans will say that these Jews are so disrespectful they even stab or push their master's presumed dead body upon leaving the city. Regarding the stabbing, it makes sense that the Romans might say this upon seeing the stab wounds on the body, because remember the body was being taken out. But regarding the pushing of the body, right? Because remember the guards first said, let us stab him. No. Let us push him. Let's feel him. No. Regarding that part, hold on. Wait. Regarding the pushing of the body, it seems problematic. Since how would the Romans even know about it, that they touched him and pushed him?
I thought like push him off of like a cliff, make sure he's dead.
No.
Palpate. That's the word you should use.
The word in Hebrew is what's the word here?
Nudging?
Maybe nudge would have been a better word.
Palpate would be the right word.
Palpate is the right word.
Lemid chafeh. Lemid chafeh means to push.
Push is also a good word.
But it means like feel around.
Like palpate.
Sure, palpate. Okay, lemid chafeh, but
Yeah, nudge.
Come on.
listen, it's Aramaic here. It's,
Doctor.
I realize we had so many English majors.
yeah, Baruch Hashem. That's the point. So if they did that, would the Romans have ever known? No. So therefore, why did Abba Sikra say they will say they pushed their rabbi? What kind of answer is that? And why did they listen? Doesn't make sense. Okay, those are the questions. Now we move on to the Amudei Chatzar. It's a pretty short Amudei Chatzar. We may just dive into some Chatzar Yosef today as well. 15 minutes. Let's see. Maybe not. Amudei Chatzar, page 94. Iyun Yaakov says, The Gemara in Bava Batra, he brings you a Gemara in Bava Batra, page 110a, says, most sons are similar to the brother of their mom. A lot of people, a lot of boys, are similar to their uncle on their mom's side.
Why?
If you think about think about people you know in your life, you'll see that correlation. It's very, very common. I know at least, off the top of my head, I can count 1, 2, 3.
Who's the uncle from your mom's side?
All from my family, man.
Who's the uncle from your mom's side?
Not only in looks, but in personality also.
I see a correlation.
It's crazy. This is the thing, the Gemara says it. So thus, since Abbas, by the way, this is a real thing because, it's famously it says, why did Khalev marry Miriam? Miriam just had tzara, she was very old and decimated and she wasn't very attractive. We learned the Masechet Sotah. Khalev married her anyway. Why? Because he wanted his sons to be like her brothers, Moshe and Aharon. He married her Leshem Shamayim, not for his own pleasures. Leshem Shamayim.
Physical pressure at all.
You know how your wife always asks you, why do you? Because, your brother.
Are you married?
Obviously you wouldn't say that, but I'm saying.
You know how your wife asks you.
The proverbial you, not you.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, so Ayun Yaakov says, since Abba Sikra was the son of Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai's sister, he was like him in the sense that he wanted to make teshuvah. He had a change of heart, like you guys said.
Isn't that a little bit of a stretch?
And that is why he helped him. They were very similar.
Isn't that a little bit of a stretch now?
Why is that a stretch? They're both leaders, just in different parts of the world.
They said that this is the uncle from the mother's side. They're saying, because they might be similar.
Well, yeah, why else does the Gemara give you that detail?
But when you say he's like the uncle, don't you usually mean looks and personality?
Yeah.
But this is just a decision to make the shul. It's not look or personality.
Well, you have to be of a certain personality. You have to have a certain quality and personality to want to make the shuvah. Not everyone has that. No? It can be attained, but that's what this is what the Yun Yaakov says. He did not end up actually making teshuvah though, because if he did so, the other Bar Yonim would have killed him. As our Gemara mentions, he was stuck between a rock and a hard place, as they say.
That's what I said.
He was stuck. It was a very difficult situation. Yeah. Next, Chochmat Manoach. This is Rabbi Manoach Hendel ben Shemaria in the 1600s. Yeah. I don't know. Yaakov says.
Teshuvah requires action.
What?
You can say Hashem listen, I'm sorry, but
What did he have to do?
He wanted to become more like in the group of Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai, a Torah student kind of thing.
you say I'm sorry, but
Instead of being a gangster, he wanted to be a Torah student.
He's changed his political party. That will be.
Yeah, but other things go along, other behaviors go along with your political party.
You can no longer.
Other behaviors, yeah.
Wouldn't one reckon that the acts that he
English man.
Spell reckon.
Here, isn't that a part of his
Yeah.
teshuvah? He's trying to save the Jewish people by helping his uncle, who's like his opposing political party.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
I'm going to go so far to say that he wasn't doing teshuvah when this entire chapter, in fact, reflects his commitment to teshuvah.
Your Honor, I
So he makes a good point. And I would say yes, that Abba Sikra does have a share in the salvation because he did devise this plan to get Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai out, and we'll see what that actually does in section 2, how it saves the Jews to an extent. But I would say, to defend the Yun Yaakov, I would say that when he uses the term teshuvah, he means a much more broad sense of the word instead of
Much more broad, or much more full and complete. Sense.
sure. There you go, meaning actually become a Torah student. More so.
I would reckon that he knows more Torah than all.
Let's reckon the next person. What do you say? Chachmat Manoach says over here, it seems that Abba Sikra told Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai to put something rotten next to him because they would not release bodies out of the city unless the body was rotting. They were very strict on what they let in and out. Right? Once the body's rotting, at which point they had no choice but to release him because everyone's suffering inside.
Because of situations like this, or what? Why would they not release?
Because the Romans are right there on the outside.
What if you're laying out a snitch? What if you're
Huh?
laying out a snitch?
He is outside the city.
But isn't there a principle?
That's where they used to bury them because you can't keep them inside. They would rot and smell.
Deacon don't rot and deacon both.
Yes, that is true.
What?
So even if he was dead, which he wasn't.
He wasn't
even
dead.
If he was, he still wouldn't rot or smell.
That's a good point, but at this point you have to understand it was a trick. The smell was present. You're saying they should have been smart enough to know that he's not going to rot even if he's dead? So therefore he's not dead? Therefore the smell must be from somewhere else? That's a good question. It's a good question. I don't know if they were on that level. I mean, they were very,
Next time
aggressive.
What you could have said was perhaps the problem was the generation has already began to lose all of its merit, including the non-decaying.
This is Manoach saying, not Yosef.
Yeah. Good. So at the end of the day, they smelled the smell. It was, they don't know if it was the carcass, that it was the carcass, and that's why they let him leave the city. It says the Aruch now. Abba Siko's advice to Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai was that one of his students should lie next to him in the box, in the casket.
So a third student.
No, second, one student. I mean, two of them are carrying, and one should be inside.
Third student.
No,
Sure.
it had
Why? In order for him not to see, in order for him not to seem to the zealots too light in weight.
Because we said that the dead weight is heavier than the.
Yeah. So they should have
How much? An entire extra body?
So maybe one of the smallest guys there, to jump inside with him.
Did they open the casket to see?
No, they didn't open it.
It's not a Catholicism.
That's how the Aruch explains it.
They didn't open it. Why put the body in the first place?
So look at note number 2.
This is not the
You
shulchan.
knew that
Huh?
when you
No, it's not the Shulchan. It's a classic dictionary on the Gemara called the Aruch.
This is the person that's like getting married.
That's a form.
No, when they're burying the person, they asked, and you look at him, is that him? Yeah, okay, we're gonna bury him.
Look, note number 2. The Aruch had a slightly different text than what we have in our Gemara. He had the following words: Ve'le'ailu bach talmidach, which means let your students climb in. Le'ailu versus what we have is meaning one yud difference. One yud difference. We have an extra yud. The extra yud means let them come into your quarters where you are,
You or you?
into your room, right? But he had one less yud. Actually, it's more different. It's more different than that. Ve'le'ailu, slightly different text, which means let them climb in. Which led him to interpret this way. Accordingly, he holds that the students were in on the scheme based on this. So the Aruch would say, since he commanded them, according to how he had the text, he commanded them to climb in with him. That means they were in on it.
Yeah, they wouldn't climb in with a real dead body.
Obviously. Okay? That's the Aruch's interpretation. Maharsha now says, the Zealots allowed the Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai's casket to be carried out by his students rather than the Zealots themselves out of the city, because they understood that this was the way of the righteous, to command specifically whom they wanted to carry their casket, as we find with Yaakov Avinu.
All these opinions just answered one of your questions.
I mean, they didn't see all my questions. These are all people way before me.
I know, but
So I asked the questions, then I did the investigation, and I wrote whatever they said.
But this is not fully what they said.
Yeah,
They said
It's
chose what is applicable.
it's almost everything. It's almost everything what they said. Very rarely do I omit something.
Wait.
it's so small that they're only bringing out like one point of your whole
Yeah.
little question.
Because they didn't see all my questions. They read the Gemara, they made certain comments. So I'm looking at the comments, that's it. You understand?
Can we get to the beginning of that?
So the Maharsha is saying, what's his point? His point is that usually the Zealots themselves would carry out the people, out of the, dead people out of the city. But Maharsha says here they made an exception with Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai because he was Talmid Chacham, and those people have a certain request. The dead have a request for whom they want to carry them, like we find with Yaakov Avinu. Right? Look at note number 3. Yaakov commanded that only his sons should carry his casket when he died in Egypt, and not his grandsons. He commanded that to Yosef. Why? Look at Rashi over there. It's off topic here, but look at Rashi. We're bringing you the sources in the bottom. Where to look?
Do you know?
Offhand, I don't remember exactly. He wanted kingship, kingliness, and Yosef was a king. Yosef was a king. Yehuda was a king. He wanted them to carry.
I didn't know people weren't allowed to get married in Jerusalem. It's not a fact.
It's not that they weren't allowed to. There's graves there.
Forbidden. I'm sorry, that's the word.
Where do you see that?
Ben Yehoyada.
Yeah, you just said it. It was forbidden to bury dead bodies in Jerusalem.
At that time. Okay, let's see. Ben Yehoyada.
All they had was Jerusalem.
It was forbidden to bury dead bodies in Jerusalem at the time, because they had the Beit HaMikdash there at the time. And so the Zealots would open the gate for bodies to go and be buried in the cemetery outside Jerusalem. However, the Zealots would usually carry the body out, just like Maharashah said, and bury it themselves, since they did not trust anyone else to do so. Because they were afraid that whoever buried the body might not return back to the city, and instead go over to the Roman legions who were all parked outside there to save themselves from the famine happening in the city in exchange for insider information. Right? Become an informant. Witness protection program. Abba Sikra advised that Rabban Yochanan should command that his students be the ones to carry his body to the cemetery, knowing that the Zealots would respect this command as a one-time exception to the rule that only Zealots could go bury bodies. Since the rule was only in place as a precautionary measure, and they would not be compelled to enforce this rule against the wishes of their late rabbi, as the Maharashah wrote. Which means, again, they respected their rabbi to a degree, as we saw at the end of the Gemara. So regarding Rashi's difficult explanation of the term they, so we said that at the end, when the guards wanted to stab the body to see if he was dead, and they wanted to push the body to see if he was dead, Abba Sikra said, don't do it. They will say that they disrespect their rabbi. Rashi said that they means the Romans. Ben Yehoyada says this is difficult. It seems that the term they refers to the Zealots, says the Ben Yehoyada. The other Zealots, the other Bayonim that were not stationed at the gate to the city. Meaning when word gets out around to those other Zealots, that the Zealots at the gate stabbed or pushed the body of their rabbi, those other Zealots would be insulted, and this would cause infighting between the Zealots themselves, because again, they respected their rabbi, lessening their already slim chances of defeating the Romans, and therefore they didn't want to make more infighting between the Zealots themselves. That's how Ben Yehoyada explains that term. And with that, it's 9:28.
It's actually 9:26.
Oh, that's wrong?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we have time to just start and dabble into the Chatzar Yosef, a couple of paragraphs here, B'ezrat Hashem. Chatzar Yosef, page 95. Here we go. One could argue that it would make more sense to say that the students did not know about the plan. We're going with that mahalach, that approach. That the students didn't know. You could argue that. Why? Because it would have produced a more authentic reaction from the students at the gate and in front of the Zealots, if they really thought the rabbi was dead. This would lessen the chance of them being found out. Nevertheless, we must assume that at least some of the students knew about it. Since someone had to think about it, someone had to place Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai's body in the casket, presumably.
Why couldn't it be his nephew?
Who, Abba Sikra?
Yeah.
They didn't meet in public. They met in private. They were of opposite stances, remember. If the other Zealots found out that he went to meet with Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai, they would have had big problems with that.
They didn't know they were related.
They knew, but it doesn't mean they condoned them being close. Okay, so at the end of the day, you can't say Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai just jumped to the casket. Somebody had to quote unquote place him in and know about it. Additionally, even if he acted dead to them, they would still have noticed him breathing. Right? You see a person's chest rise and contract.
Yeah, if they thought he was dead and all of a sudden he starts breathing, they would have celebrated.
First of all, minimal breathing. There's people that you don't have to breathe in your chest, like.
No way,
like
man.
that.
No way.
You can breathe without your chest going in and out.
Yeah.
Do it right now. Do it right now for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Do what?
5 minutes. I'm counting.
Do what? Now
Can't
breathe.
We're gonna watch it.
There you go.
We're gonna watch it.
You can't do it. You can't do it, man.
Of course you can.
Can you play dead without your chest rising up and falling?
You can do it minimally. Maybe the naked eye won't be able to see it.
No way. No.
The clothing and
Nah.
I don't believe it.
Unless you're standing at the dude's
That's
chest.
hard.
If you come close enough, you see already the chest moving. You see
Standing
the,
at the chest.
Oh,
You can see like a
Hold on,
heartbeat.
one
You can
second.
see a heartbeat.
not a heartbeat. You see the chest rise a little bit, even a little bit.
With the casket and everything.
Okay, let's continue. You're right. Therefore, you must assume that at least some of the students helped him with the plot. We have to assume that because they had to help him get in, they had to carry him. We'll see.
You're saying a teacher is never without a student.
Pretty much. Next paragraph. Why is it that the students did not know the difference in weight of a dead body versus a live body? But the Baryonim did know the difference.
Because they're used to carrying out the dead body.
A simple answer. Okay, thank you for giving me all the answers. Let's read. A simple answer is that the Zealots frequented dead bodies at a much higher rate, like you guys said. They constantly carrying dead bodies out of the city, as the Ben Yehuda mentioned, and they likely even killed people in skirmishes and fights with the other political groups that got out of hand. Therefore, they knew from experience that a dead body is heavier than a live one. Meanwhile, the students spent most of their time studying Torah and likely did not come across dead bodies as often. Although there is a halachic principle that the students likely came across in their studies. You know what it's called? It's called chayin oseret atzmo. This is halakha in many places. It means a living being carries itself. In the sense that a living person, when being carried, feels more manageable to the carrier, the person carrying him, because the one being carried is using his muscles to maintain the balance of the two by centering his weight. It's a proprioception kind of thing that your brain does.
First of all, you could play like
it's the inner ear balance mechanism.
You ever played dead or whatever, like, and had somebody try to pick you up, you like dead weight.
Of course, it's much more difficult.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes.
Okay, so if I'm pretending to be dead, I'm pretty sure I can just lay someone.
Ronnie, just let me just finish the paragraph. A dead body, on the other hand, does not have this sense of balance and of the muscles, and therefore becomes what is colloquially known as dead weight. Thank you, Ronnie. Just wait another sentence. And therefore, they become more cumbersome to the carrier, to carry, more difficult. This concept comes up throughout different topics in Torah, such as the law regarding carrying a child in a public domain on Shabbat. You're not allowed to carry in a public domain on Shabbat an item, but if it's a child, can you carry a child? The same concept applies. It's called chayin oseret atzmo. A living person carries himself. So is it considered me carrying if I'm carrying a child in the public domain or not? If he's carrying himself, answer is mideoraita no. So there's a distinction. If the baby is a newborn or something, he can't walk, then he can't carry himself. So carrying him is like carrying any other item, and it's prohibited on Shabbat, deoraita. If there's no eruv. If the baby knows how to walk, however, then if there's no eruv, it's still prohibited to carry him on Shabbat. Only midirabanan, however, because it's a fence that you may carry something else. This being the case, how did the students not know? They know this law. They know this concept. They know dead weight. So how did they not know? How would they not be able to feel that Rabban Yochanan Ben Zakkai was really not dead?
They did know.
The answer is that the students only learned this theoretically. They only learned the theoretic halachot, but they did not experience and practice the weight of a dead body as frequently as the zealots did, like we said. Experience trumps didactics and hearsay. You know what didactics is?
Hearsay, that's you.
Didactics is classes, right? Theoretical. Experience is always better. You need both, but experience is better. There's much more depth to be said on what we just said about how they wouldn't know about that he was dead, and we're going to talk about that next week with Hashem. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.